Welcome to Full Disclosure, a podcast project conceived entirely to let me spend more time than I would ever get on the radio with interesting people. I say this more often than not, to be honest, but this week it's particularly true. Saida Wasi, welcome.
Thank you.
Baroness, politician, conservative for now, podcaster. Always. We shall see. It's testing times. And an early warner. I mean, been warning for a very long time about your party's problem with Islamophobia. So you must be feeling very silly now that those fears have turned out to be completely unfounded.
Well, it's the interesting thing about the last week when the racism has been so overt is that finally people who've been saying it to me privately are now saying it publicly, and that's a good sign. But secondly, people who in the past just thought I was in some sort of weird overdrive on this issue are now saying, actually, you'd called it right. I mean, Ian Dale, actually, who I've known for many, many years, amazing guy from the right of centre space. He did an interview last week where he said, Saida Wasi's talked about this, and I've always thought she's over the top with it, but she's actually been proven right. And I called him and I said, look, Ian, thank you, because you see me now. And just to be seen finally, to be heard, is really important, because it has felt like a really long, lonely battle. So the last week and a half, 2 weeks have been awful, but have also been really positive at the same time, because finally we're talking about it. Finally, commentators are challenging my colleagues, and hopefully it may result in better policy making. Although after that awful State of Nations or whatever address it was on Friday night from the Prime Minister and the subsequent announcements, I'm now worried that it's going to get a whole lot worse.
Because it will crystallise the position that was espoused by Anderson, and people will have to choose to either support it or condemn it. And there won't be any room to ignore it, which is what has been happening since you started shouting from the rooftops.
Yeah, and also because I think when I hear Michael Gove make announcements, and I've seen for years and years, both at the cabinet table and having worked alongside him and heard his views on these things, what was initially seen as Michael just being slightly fringe and Michael has now been so mainstreamed, and the party around has changed from being a sensible, moderate centre-right party with people like Dominic Grieve and Ken Clarke and David Willits and Justine Greening and, William Hague has now morphed into this slightly weird, odd, far-right party. And so Michael's views are now seen as mainstream rather than on the fringe. And so what he couldn't get through a decade ago, he's now going to get through, because there are people who are even more extreme than he is. And so it is worrying that, is this going to be a last-ditch attempt by a government in its kind of final moments to make the policy space worse than it needs to be?
Who are they chasing? What votes are they chasing?
You see, this is the bit I can't work out.
Same here.
Because for every person that you might get in the far right space, you're losing probably two in the liberal space. If you take David Cameron's work on equal marriage, it wasn't just people from the LGBTQ community who suddenly thought, we're now going to think about the Conservative Party as an option. It was liberals generally who saw us as a more decent party to vote for. So you don't just pick up a bit of the vote, you pick up a broader vote because of the kind of people we're seen to be. So if you're considered to be, compassionate, kind, inclusive Conservatives who care about the environment and care about, the rights of gay people or women or whatever it may happen to be, lots of people will suddenly see you as a potential option. Whereas what we're now doing is turning off what I consider to be obvious Conservative voters. I mean, for me, I'll give you an example. British Muslims are so obviously centre-right, obviously believe in, entrepreneurship. Lots of them are in business, believe in a low-tax economy, hard work, conservative society, family, all of the things that I grew up with. And the number of people who say to me, if your party didn't despise and treat Muslims in the way that they do, this is my natural home. But it can't be my natural home when I hear them saying the things that they say about British Muslims. That's why, I say this all the time, James. I feel like I'm in a toxic relationship and I need to get out. I know I need to get out. Everybody around me is telling me I need to get out. But I can't, because in the end, I believe in the Conservative Party. These are my values. But the Conservative Party don't believe in conservative values anymore.